We're back, and we're here to tell you whether Jonathan Taylor is a must-play this week on your DFS contests. Welcome back to the Power Grid for 2022. I'm here with Devin Knotts and John Lee, familiar faces. It's just going to be us three for the beginning part of this year. So I'm taking over the host chair, which is a little daunting. But the good news is we can lean on our two experts here for a little more analysis. But don't worry. We'll still kick in a couple disagreements here just because Devin's on the show, and naturally that's what happens when he is. So thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you, and let's get right into it, guys, and talk Vegas, just like we always do. We go right to John, our Vegas expert, who writes our Vegas value chart on Footballguys.com every week. Tell us what's going on, John, in Vegas with the totals for the main slate this week.
Yeah, it's week one, probably the least accurate week for Vegas every year. We really don't know what we don't know yet. That said, we got to start somewhere. So let's start at the top. There are two games with team or implied totals of over 50 points. The first is Kansas City Chiefs. Pat Mahomes travels out to the desert to take on Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. That's got I think a 54 point total right now, and a lot of fantasy goodness on that particular game. The other one, kind of sneaky, is going to get less attention because it doesn't have the big name quarterbacks. You got Derek Carr going up against Justin Herbert there in LA. That game's 52.5 points total, with the Chargers being a short favorite and a 28 points implied team total. Just south of that, you've got three away favorites, those being the Indianapolis Colts. We'll talk a little bit, as you led in with, Ryan, about what to do about Jonathan Taylor and his lofty salary this week. The Eagles are, potentially a preseason favorite to win the NFC East against my Dallas Cowboys. They're taking on the Detroit Lions in Detroit, and they're a short favorite there, as well as the Baltimore Ravens taking on, it's a revenge narrative, right? Joe Flacco against against the Ravens. There's a couple revenge games this week, including Devin's Baker Mayfield going up against his former team there in Carolina. But as far as this week goes with Vegas, I take it probably the least seriously of all the weeks, because we still don't know which defenses are going to gel coming off of a long off season and some free agency moves. And you could say the same thing about the offenses. There are certain players who are just going to make plays, but equally, I find that this week historically is one of the less accurate weeks from a Vegas perspective. That said, potentially, if you think there is a bad line, it does give us kind of an advantage heading into week one in terms of how you approach the week from a strategy perspective.
Let's pick a bad line. What are we thinking here? I have one.
We're 4 minutes in and Devin's off script. I love it. Let's go. What's your bad line, Devin?
Bears 49ers over 40.5. The Bears have one of the worst secondaries in football. I think Trey Lance comes out and has a big game, and Justin Fields looked much improved in the preseason. So he's still probably going to turn the ball over once or twice, which will leave a short field. And I think it's a 28-20 type game. So I'm going pretty heavy on Bears 49ers over 40.5.
It's interesting. I like that too. The Bears offensive line is dreadful, but Fields can obviously make things happen with his legs when he's scrambling, and off script plays can be big plays too. So I like that too. That is awfully low. I think it's just a vote of a lack of confidence. I really jumbled that up, but I think you know what I mean. With in Trey Lance and in the Bears in general, obviously not a lot of high expectations there. But it can't be any worse for those Bears, can it? John talked a little bit about week one specific strategy in the Vegas segment, and I had a great segue until Devin took us off the rails. But let's talk about week one strategy in general.
Wait. Does John have one? You're failing.
Okay. Everybody needs a line. Everybody. Okay. John, do you have a line that's out of whack? And then we'll get into week one specific strategy with Devin. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the New Orleans Saints being 5.5 point favorites over Atlanta. Jameis Winston's still the same quarterback he always has been, and he's liable to throw 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, one of which could be a pick 6. Atlanta's at home. We know their quarterback situation is less than optimal. I just feel like that's a sucker's line when you got a team like the Saints. They've got a decent defense, but their offense, a lot of questions with Mike Thomas. Alvin Kamara is a year older. Basically the talk of the offseason there is Chris Olave. I got some questions about their offense, and I just don't know that they should be 5.5-point favorites this weekend on the road, but we'll see.
Yeah, good point. And, I'll go ahead and throw one in too. I don't think it's out of whack necessarily, but I do want to see Indy prove it to us a little bit more. And I do think that Houston's going to be better than they were last year. One might even say plucky throughout the year. So Houston getting 7.5 at home, they could be a tough out week to week. That's right. They're making fun of me for my words already, for those of you on video.
UCF education. I think.
But Houston is, hey, I promised I wouldn't bring up UCF first, so thanks for that. But I think Houston's going to be a little bit of a tough out, especially in the division at home. So that's one to keep an eye on too for the week. So back to, week 1, we know it's wacky, right? We had pricing come out, weeks, if not a month or so ago. Vegas tends to be a little more off in week 1 and expectations get shattered pretty early in the NFL. So from a DFS perspective, Devin, what is your, overarching week 1 strategy? And then if you have anything specific to this particular slate, let us know where that takes you.
Yeah, it's interesting because normally week 1 we have 2 or 3 players who are just grossly mispriced at least, which just drives up the roster percentage, ownership, whatever you want to call it. But this year we don't really have that. We have a couple guys who are out or have changed roles. So Dameon Pierce, I think, is one that some people might get excited about at 4,800 on DraftKings, but it seems like not going to be that popular. But we'll talk about him, I'm sure, later. But we don't really have that guy or guys that are 30, 40, 50% rostered. So it's going to be interesting this week where it's sort of largely unknown. This is like one of the more unsure weeks that I think we've had for week 1 in a long time, having done this. I think John and I are both over year 10 doing this now. And I can't remember, but my memory is also failing me. So maybe I'm just old, but I can't remember a week where it's been this uncertain as far as we don't really know outside of a couple high-end guys how things are going to shape up, especially at the wide receiver position. You get into some of those mid-grade wide receivers, and there's a lot of open questions. So I'm really curious to see how we approach this week. And I'm sure we're going to have differing views in the roster percentages that I have currently outside of a couple guys. And we'll talk about that as we get into positions, are all bunched up. So it's a great opportunity that if you have a couple guys that you really like, you could really, really have an advantage on the field this week.
Yeah. So in that answer, you successfully, despite the age difference between you, called both John and you old. So good job there. John, how about any GPP specific strategy? I know you're the GPP guy here among us. So what do you think in terms of week 1, both for general week 1 and also slate specific?
Yeah, I mean, I think Devin touched on something. Believe it or not, my first take of the year is to agree largely with what Devin said.
This is not going to be a good show if we're just agreeing the whole time.
The people don't like when we agree.
No, they don't. But I'm sure once we get on the players, we'll disagree plenty. But this is a week where if you have a stance on a player that you really like, I mean, the distribution in terms of roster percentages are fairly equilibrated, as Devin has said. And with that in mind, if you go heavy on a player that you really like, or a trio of players that you really like, and they do go off, you've got a huge advantage over the field, because this week it's just not there. In terms of Slate specific, I don't know that there's anything specific to this given slate, but the one thing I've already done is to go through, and I have a single lineup that I like that I put in every single entry DK GPP. And it's a high risk, high reward strategy. If you manage to actually bink one like that, you're literally going to win hundreds of thousands of dollars. You just have to have a higher risk tolerance, but it's something that I started doing last year, and it resonates with my style of play. And if you've got that level of risk tolerance, I recommend it.
And when John hits one, you won't see him the next week. So,
and that's a good point. I mean, if you're going to hit one single entry tournament, you're probably going to win all the ones you enter if your lineup's that good. So, good call there. So now, I guess we'll move into positions for those who haven't been around, for years. We tend to start Vegas and then go position by position. We'll list some cash game plays, some GPP specific plays. And then we'll just talk about the most popular guys and kind of take stances. And we alluded to some percent rostered projections. Devin does those for us at Footballguys. And when we get to and when we get to running backs, we're going to talk about the guy that's the highest and what to do there. But let's not forget about our passers here. Let's start at quarterback. No real news here. In week one, not a ton of injury news. John alluded to Zach Wilson being out. We're just going to go right past that because it doesn't matter. Sorry, Zach. But Devin, why don't you start us on quarterbacks and tell us how you're building there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it really depends. So I'm going to start with the cash game play, and that's Jalen Hurts going up against Detroit indoors at 6,800 on DraftKings. I think that's a phenomenal price. On FanDuel, I'm trying to pull that up right now. He is $8,000. So he's a little more expensive on FanDuel, but still comes out near the top of my board. But having the rushing ability, and we know Miles Sanders is allergic to scoring touchdowns. So I think Jalen Hurts is a guy who, going up against Detroit, they pretty much bring everyone back in this from a secondary standpoint, which isn't a good thing considering Jeff Okudah might be one of the bigger busts out of my Ohio State Buckeyes. So it pains me to see that. And then Amani, I'm not even going to try and pronounce Aruwariye. We'll go with that. It was a 5th round pick. Didn't really do much last year. Wasn't all that great. So Mike Hughes out of the slot's a good player, but I look at the Eagles, and if they have Super Bowl aspirations, which I think some people are saying they do at 22-1, it's all going to be on Jalen Hurts. And I think he comes out and has a big game and scores multiple touchdowns. I'm going to save the GPP guy that I really like. But another guy that I do like this week is Joe Burrow going up against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a funnel defense. They have a phenomenal run defense. And their secondary isn't great. So their safeties are solid with Minka Fitzpatrick and Terrell Edmonds, but their corners leave a ton to be desired. And if we know anything about the Bengals, it's they can throw the ball just as well as anybody. So one of my favorite stacks this week is Burrow and Higgins. No surprise if you watch the show. I think I said T. Higgins every single week last year, but because they just don't price him appropriately. So I think Burrow and Hurts are my top cash games, and I'll come back to GPPs in just a second. John?
Yeah, I'm gonna partially jump in and disagree with you on the Steeler take. They do not have a number one corner. They probably don't have a number 2 corner. So there's nobody to shut down on the corners. I agree with you there. Their run defense stinks though. They absolutely stink. So I think they're going to be bad again this year. Okay, we'll see. I mean, they were awful last year. They were 32nd in the league. So I guess it has to improve in terms of ranking. But they were not good against the run. So I think they can be beaten in both ways, sadly. And sadly, for me, of course, being a Steeler fan, but this year is going to be pretty brutal. If I were an offense, I would not want, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, and those guys running after my quarterback too much. So we'll see how it goes. But I do like the Cincy calls this week, albeit for maybe slightly different logic. John, what do you have at quarterback?
Yeah, quarterback, just looking at my model, the top 5 names on the model, top of the list, Jalen Hurts. After that, Jameis Winston, Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, Marcus Mariota.
Wait.
Let me finish, Devin, before you get started. The point in naming those 5 is there's one clear guy that you're comfortable with, and that's Jalen Hurts. This is merely on points per dollar, and I'm pretty sure, Devin, if you go and look at any site, including ours, you're going to get the same names coming out. I'm not saying those guys are good plays, but if you look at points per dollar, those are the guys that come out the top. The difference, obviously, is caliber of player. Jalen Hurts is better than all of those guys. He's also coming in at a little bit of a premium at 6,800. That said, this is a week where I think you pay up for that at 68. For some of the reasons that Devin's already said. I think the one thing I didn't hear him say is that last year, I checked out the game logs from last year, there was only one game where he ran the ball less than 8 times. And that's a big advantage at the quarterback position. If you can't get there, and we're going to talk about lineup construction from a cash game perspective, there isn't a lot of value unless you're going to take some chances at the wide receiver position. If you can't get there, I think another rookie from last year's class is acceptable, and that's Tua Tago. I'm starting off pretty well this year.
Here we go.
I think I got it at the end. We're going to call him Tua for the remainder of the show. He's 5,700. He's got a few more weapons this year, a little bit more experience under his belt. Obviously, Tyreek Hill is in town. Chase Edmonds likes to catch and passes out of the backfield. And Jalen Waddle, obviously coming off of a strong rookie season. I think he's much improved. I don't know that he's going to be a star in this league, but at 5,700, you get an $1,100 break on him. And I think you could do worse for cash games. Those are the 2 guys I like in cash.
So can I ask you a question? Did you get a new computer this offseason?
No, I don't think so. Why?
Because I think your model's broken.
Oh man, no.
Any model that has Jameis Winston as the number 2 pick needs to.
Well, how many points do you have him projected for?
I'm fine with Daniel Jones. I'm okay with that one at $5,000.
What do you have Jameis projected for? I've got 18.27 points.
I'm at 16.3.
Okay, well, that's where it's off.
I don't go above like 17 for Jameis ever, just because he's Jameis Winston.
Well, interceptions are only -1. So, well, if you're still with us and didn't immediately turn off the feed when John mentioned Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, that was a list of guys he wasn't taking. So the reason there was to say there's one player that sticks out among all these relative turds.
Somebody was listening.
So I'll translate here between John and Devin. That was the idea. He took a roundabout way to get there, but and for those new to the show, John mispronouncing football players' names will happen at least 7 times this season. So we're on the board. Devin, what are your thoughts on a GPP dart? And then let's
couple guys. Matt Ryan's my favorite GPP play.
Okay.
Houston, you can basically beat them however you want. They have the worst secondary in football, ranked 32nd by multiple sources heading into this season. Jonathan Taylor, we're going to talk about him, and he's going to be extremely popular for good reason. But if he gets them there and Matt Ryan throws the touchdowns, I think he's a nice pivot off of Taylor at 5,500. I do like Trey Lance a lot at 6,000. And like I said, I think that game goes significantly over 40 points. And if it does, Trey Lance is going to be a big part of that. And then one additional name that I'll throw out there. I'm a believer of a Trevor Lawrence comeback at 5,600. I think that with Travis Etienne as a receiver / running back, I think they use him heavily out of the passing game. They spent a lot of money on Christian Kirk. They still have Laviska Shenault there, and they went out and got some Evan Ingram maybe.
They traded
don't.
Chenault,
Oh,
but that
they
doesn't
traded
matter.
Chenault. Welcome
That
to
doesn't
week
hurt-
one, everyone.
That doesn't hurt the case you were making.
I feel like I'm Stephen A. Smith and just like misquoting things. But it is what it is. Who did they pick up? Zay Jones and Marvin Jones and Evan Ingram. Got it. Okay. Clearly, my time hasn't been spent on the Jaguars, but I do think the talent wins out with Lawrence and the Commanders. I got that right. They're not the football team anymore. The Commanders have one of the best defensive lines in football. They've struggled historically against the pass, so I think that Lawrence could be a sneaky play there.
All right, John, one or two GPP guys before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's watched the show for any prolonged period of time knows that typically my GPP quarterbacks are driven off of the wide receivers that I like, and typically, or this week, the guys that come out pretty high, at least as of Thursday night. Kyler Murray, believe it or not, I think some of the Arizona wide receivers are going overlooked, at least as of tonight. I mean, certainly over the weekend, numbers tighten up in terms of ownership and percent rostered. But right now, Kyler Murray is going overlooked in that game we talked about at the top of the show in the Vegas report. And in the other one, I've got a couple other names here, but the other one is Kirk Cousins against Green Bay, 6,100. You've got some really nice receivers there, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, obviously. And those guys, looking at some of their early percent rostered projections, definitely not high enough from a field perspective. So I'll stop there. But I think Kyler and Kirk are two decent GPP quarterbacks in week one.
Okay, well, between Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins, you guys are definitely picking undesirable quarterbacks. So that's contrarian from a GPP perspective. But I do agree with both of those takes. Both have chance at that 300-yard bonus if you're playing on DraftKings. So that's obviously a good thing you want. Let's move. So let me summarize the section real quick. And for the record, Hurts was the guy that jumped off the page to me as well. So Devin said Hurts in cash. So did John. And Devin threw out Matt Ryan and Trey Lance in GPPs. And John threw out Kirk Cousins there at the end. So that's the summary of your quarterbacks. Let's move on to running backs. And let's just talk Jonathan Taylor. Devin, are you doing it? Are you not? Is he a must play? I know in GPPs you said Matt Ryan, but
yeah,
let's talk cash game. Do you need Jonathan Taylor to succeed in cash?
Cash games on DraftKings, yes. On FanDuel, no. He's over 10,000 on FanDuel, which is above my limit for playing just about any running back. His prop is like 97.5 rushing yards, and I'm sure he'll get some receiving there too. But Derrick Henry's also at 97.5. So those are the two highest on the board at the moment. But Derrick Henry doesn't catch the passes that Taylor does. And for me, it's, if you want safe, I think it's pretty safe as far as 90 yards and at least one touchdown with upside of 120, 130 yards and multiple touchdowns. So in cash, I think you can get there. GPPs, look, taking the highest salaried player at 30+% rostered with all the other options that are out there, I can't do it. I think it's too high. I think it's a fade for me. I look at other running backs that I do like, such as, I think you can make a case for Christian McCaffrey where he outscores Jonathan Taylor. I think Derrick Henry could do it. I think Dalvin Cook could do it. I think Austin Eckler potentially could do it. So there's a bunch of guys that are cheaper. Joe Mixon, we talked about Pittsburgh's being bad against the run last year, even though I think they'll be improved. I still think that they could struggle. So, or Mixon could have a big game. So John, where are you at? I can't, 30% is for the guy, for me, is for the guy that's mispriced, that is like a mid-range guy that's going to get all the carries. I can't pay top dollar for a 30% roster running back. No,
I'm totally with you here. I mean, I don't know what you've got on your numbers, Devin, but I've actually got Christian McCaffrey projected to score more points, and he's $800 or $600 less. He's the guy that I'm going with this week in cash. I'm actually not not planning on putting Jonathan Taylor into my cash games. And I surely am not planning on putting him into GPPs. In fact, if he stays in that 25 to 30% range, you can check me out over the weekend. I'll do mass entry, 150 lineups into the Millie Maker, and you'll see Tip and Pick will have zero shares because that's such an egregious number on him and his potential upside. I think you're going to see more Nyheim Hines this year out of that backfield. Remember the quarterback that was back there last year. I think they've got an upgrade. I think they don't need to hand the ball off as much. I think there's a lot of reasons to like him less. And at 9,100 and the general popularity that you've already described, he's a major fade for me in both formats, cash and GPP.
I fully agree with both of you. And I'm glad you both said it first to make me feel better about it. But yeah, I mean, I see guys that can score just as many points that have a lower price tag. So I don't necessarily think Taylor is a lock to catch 3, 4, 5 passes. Hines probably is, especially with the shallow target tree that they have there. I mean, Michael Pittman's the only proven receiver. Nyheim Hines is going to catch balls, and he might do it while he's on the field with Jonathan Taylor at the same time, but only one of them can catch the ball at the same time on any given play. I know this is revolutionary football stuff here, but I don't think he's a lock to catch all these balls. He probably gets 100-yard rushing bonus, more times than Christian McCaffrey, but McCaffrey probably catches 3 more passes than him and makes up for those 3 points in that way. So
I admittedly don't see. I think we'll have to disagree on taking McCaffrey in cash. I think that Taylor's upside and his floor are both higher than McCaffrey. So if I just look at the 2 games against Houston, 143 yards and 2 touchdowns and 145 and 2 touchdowns. So like McCaffrey, his floor is definitely lower than Taylor, I feel like, in the sense of, are they going to fully unleash him this week? Are they have some new weapons on the offense? Laviska Shenault did go to Carolina. And DJ Moore's still there. So in Baker Mayfield sucks. So
there you go. Better than Sam Darnold. Or as
I don't
John
know if that's true.
Or as John may have said in the past, Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
But I would argue you don't have to have either of those guys in your cash game lineup. So somebody that I'm pretty
probably high on, play one of them.
Probably, but you don't have to. And somebody that I'm high on this week, especially just given his price and his role in the offense, is Aaron Jones. We'll talk about it in the receiver section, but Allen Lazard looks questionable at best. He's I think missed practice the last couple of days. We know that Aaron Jones is going to catch a lot of balls anytime Davante Adams misses games, which we saw last year. Davante Adams not on the team, much like Laviska Shenault changed teams. You guys may have heard of that one. But I think Aaron Jones is a shoo-in to catch a handful of passes in this game and has 5-6 catch potential in any given week. So where are you guys on him and other potential cash game plays?
I guess before we answer, you don't see AJ Dillon's presence taking more action away from Aaron Jones this year?
Not from a pass catching perspective. I think both can very easily coexist and both will be on the field a lot together. Rodgers has said it and he said there are 2 of our best 11. We got to play our best 11. I think he's including Allen Lazard in that too, who may not play this week. So I think both those guys are going to be on the field. They don't have wide receivers. They have Sammy Watkins. Like that's who they're trotting out there.
Aaron Jones, 4.5 receptions is -140. So I don't mind it.
So who else do you like, Devin?
Who else do I like? I think Travis Etienne is interesting at 5,600. I think that he's going to play a significant role in this offense, especially as a receiving back.
Do you care if James Robinson is active?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really.
I think people might have just thought that, so I wanted to get it in there.
Yeah, I mean, will he have a role? Sure, but I don't really see him. If he is active, I don't think he's going to be, taking a huge percentage of the snaps. Given that it would be crazy, it would seemingly be early if he came back. But what do I know?
I agree with you on that.
For a GPP play, Antonio Gibson is interesting against Jacksonville. I know he's not always the pass catcher with JD McKissick. Hopefully he's still there and I didn't misquote that one. And then Saquon Barkley at 6,100.
You don't like Saquon Barkley.
I don't.
This is fantastic.
Like, let me make that very clear that I don't like him. But let me just look at his ownership percentage. I don't think it's that high. If I pull it up, I have him at 5% at 6,100. Like, how are the Giants going to move the ball? Maybe they're not, but like healthy Saquon is the only week that you want to play him because he'll be hurt at some point this season. And while he only gets 1 yard per carry and then busts out a 40 or 50 yard run, all he needs is one long one and he potentially could pay off. So, and then the last guy that I'll mention, I could see him being a cash game. Probably won't get there, but Dalvin Cook at 7,900, I really like against this Packers defense. Packers have one of the best secondaries in football, and Minnesota, how are they going to move the ball? Probably on the ground, I would think. So I think Dalvin Cook, another guy that as the season progresses has injury issues, but he's a guy that when healthy, he's one of the best in the league.
Okay. John, how about you?
Yeah, I'm also on the Saquon train this week. He's too cheap at 6,100.
Yeah.
I think he's going to end up being more popular than Devin thinks, though. Just as he was talking, I did a couple checking over some other sites. Other sites I'm seeing 20% and 14% respectively. So he'll definitely get higher than 5 by Sunday at lineup lock. That said, 6,100 I think is fair for him. He's going to catch a few passes. He's healthy right now. We don't know how long that's going to last, but
and he was really trendy in season long analysis as like a second round pick. You want to hammer just the bounce back. There's no one else in that backfield, etc. So,
what are we doing with Dameon Pierce? We just have to ask the question.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I don't know. I just hate playing running backs who we don't know will have a pass catching role as underdogs, of more than a touchdown. So he's mega cheap, right? 4,800 DraftKings because he was priced as a second or third stringer. I don't know. I don't feel good about it. I think you can get to lineups you feel comfortable with without him. What do you guys think?
I think he's a player who's going to become more popular as the week goes on. So he's at like 4 to 5% from the places that I've seen in my numbers. Some places have him lower than that. John, I'm not sure what you're seeing, but I think as people are building lineups, he's going to creep up in the 8 to 10% just because people are going to want the savings. For me, it's all about touches. Do I trust the Houston offense? No, absolutely not. And it's a guy who really has never had over 100 carries at any level of football. Well, I don't know about his high school stats, but his college stats in his 4 years, 106 carries was the most he had in a year. So are they going to come out and give him 18 to 20 carries? No, I think Rex Burkhead has a role in that offense.
But Florida fans will say that that's Dan Mullen's fault. So,
yeah.
No, I'm with you. Go ahead, John. Oh, John's coughing. Sorry. I thought he was coming off mute to talk.
No, I was coughing. Look, the thing about Dameon Pierce is at 4,800, he's got to get you 20 points. So you're basically counting on a 100-yard game with the bonus and a touchdown. Is he going to do that in his NFL debut? I don't know. Rex Burkhead is a guy that NFL coaches trust. I think he gets in there to spell him more. That said, Devin, I think your question was around what other folks are projecting him at in terms of ownership, and it's somewhere between 1% and 3% where I'm seeing. And if that's the case, then I will definitely be overweight. I've got him somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12% likelihood of achieving GPP value, which makes him a pretty good GPP play if he stays that unpopular. Although I suspect he creeps up, as you've already intimated there. My cash game plays. I mean, I don't know how we are on time, but Saquon is top
way over.
We're fine. Tight end, we're going to mention one name and move on.
CMC is my favorite expensive player on the slate for cash games, and then Joe Mixon. I think the Bengals offensive line is dramatically improved this year, and Mixon is fairly cheap at 7,100, so he's a pivot away from those other two guys.
All right, so summing that up, we're fading Jonathan Taylor to answer the teaser question from the top. Devin likes Travis Etienne, and in GPPs likes Antonio Gibson, Saquon Barkley. John likes Barkley, CMC, Mixon, in cash, from what I heard there, which I agree with. And I like Aaron Jones for whatever that's worth, in cash even too. So moving on to wide receivers. This is one position where we actually did have some injury news. I should say not some, but maybe perhaps notable. I'm not sure any of it really comes to fruition or how dinged up these guys really are. But I'll run through it and try to be brief. But Drake London, rookie for Atlanta, was limited in practice the last 2 days with a knee. He hasn't done anything since he hurt himself in the first preseason game, August 12th, but he does look on track to play. I think they were kind of treating him with kid gloves, knowing that even though he's a rookie, he's going to be a starter. Michael Thomas, the oft-injured New Orleans Saint, has a hamstring, limited both of the last 2 days. Chris Godwin, coming back from his knee, was full practice Wednesday, did not practice Thursday. I don't know that was a downgrade as much as just seeing how the knee responds. Deontay Johnson of Pittsburgh, limited each of the last 2 days with a shoulder. He hurt that shoulder in the third week of the preseason when the Steelers hosted Detroit. Alan Lazard, I mentioned earlier, didn't practice either of the last 2 days, so that's not looking great. And then Rondale Moore for Arizona with a hamstring was forced out of practice today, Thursday, and is set to get an MRI, which are three letters that we don't like hearing. So, John, you mentioned Kyler Murray earlier in his receivers. Was Rondale Moore potentially not being out part of that analysis?
It certainly was, but I think what that does, another guy that was right there with him was Marquise Brown, making his debut out there. I still like the play. I did like Rondale Moore a lot leading into today. Unfortunately, he was on the entire slate the person who comes out most likely to reach GPP value. So this news is less than optimal, but we deal with that. I guess the question then becomes, with questions elsewhere in that wide receiving core, can you play a 60-year-old AJ Green? If you're going to play him, it's in week 1, right? He's rested.
It's the Saquon Barkley theory.
Yeah, but the thing with Barkley and McCaffrey is they're really fast still when they're rested. And the thing with AJ Green is the whole rest of the NFL that's already, more spry than him is also rested. So tough one there, but I'll go another way, but you go ahead and keep going.
Yeah. So, look, I'll stand by it. Kyler has upside with his legs as well. We saw it last year. He can get you the bonus through 100 yards rushing. So if he throws a couple passes or gets in the end zone a couple times, he can do it any number of ways. I don't think you need a double stack, I guess is what I'm getting at. It can be a single stack with Hollywood Brown and go that way. I'll just transition over then into cash game quarterbacks. This is where you're going to have to take some chances because I think we're spending. I think we largely agreed we're spending anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000 a quarterback. We're going to have a fairly expensive running back, and then a mid-tier running back. And so here you're going to have to take a chance on a 4K receiver or less. And there are a couple of them on the list. I'll be curious to hear who you guys like. But I'm trying to go middle of the road here. I've got JuJu. Ryan's JuJu, former JuJu, going up in that same game against Arizona. He's 5,200, wide receiver 1. Really struggled last year with some poor quarterback play. This year he goes from zero to hero, so to speak, with quarterback. I look for him to make a big improvement, probably the cheapest he'll be all year. So I think he's a pretty strong play. I've already talked about Adam Thielen. Going up against Green Bay. I do acknowledge what Devin said in terms of Green Bay secondary is very strong preseason rating, but I still think he's too cheap. Another name that came out was Pittman, Michael Pittman against Houston. Again, agree with Devin's take on that secondary, worst in the NFL. and Pittman's 5,500 playing with the best quarterback he's played with in his career. So I think that there's a pretty decent floor for those guys. And then I won't mention the names, but I'm going to ask you guys 4,200 or less. What's your favorite cash game play on DraftKings?
Well, let me toss something in there. I noticed Pittman as well. I think there's two receivers, both Pittman and Jamar Chase, who this is the cheapest they're going to be all year. Especially Pittman. I mean, who the heck is Indy throwing it to? So I really like that call. Devin, you go ahead and answer the 4,200 wide receiver question, or filibuster until you pull up the $4,200 wide receivers like I'm doing right now. Go ahead.
Yikes. Do I have to?
Do you want me to give you the choices?
I mean, the choices are like Kadarius Toney, Rondale Moore, Jahan Dotson. Like
Rondale Moore is probably not playing, so I'd take him out.
Right. So Jacoby Myers at 43. Can I do that?
Yeah. I mean, if for some reason Deontay Johnson doesn't play, George Pickens is 4,100, and he has looked, quite good in the preseason, as anyone on Twitter has gathered. Yeah, those are some pretty bad names, though. I guess it's Kadarius Toney would be mine.
I don't have a strong opinion here. But there's another name that nobody's talking about. Shout out to Dan Bach, a 3K crapper in the form of Romeo Doubs. If Lazard doesn't play, who else is going to catch the ball? I mean, the thing about the quarterback situation in Green Bay is he's going to find his receiver, whoever it is. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about Doubs in terms of his skill set, but if there's nobody else to catch passes, he might be a guy that is off the radar for GPPs for certain. But I do think you're going to have to pick one of these guys, whether it's Wan'Dale Robinson out of the slot there in New York, and some of the other guys you guys have mentioned, Kadarius Toney. Jahan Dotson comes out pretty high, but I don't know whether I trust Carson Wentz to get him the ball. But I think there's a relevant conversation, because if you build a lineup, you're going to have to go with one of these guys, I think.
That hurts.
Yeah.
It really hurts. Like, I mean, one of these guys is in a GPP. I think you're right. I think that you're going to have to pick one of these guys, especially if you want to. Like, I just built a roster that's doesn't have one of those guys, but Aaron Jones, Travis Etienne, and Christian McCaffrey at running back, and then T. Higgins, Adam Thielen, and JuJu at wide receiver. So it's possible, and I probably wouldn't do it in cash, but in a GPP setting, I think you need more upside than the names that I just listed. So there's going to be a sub 4K guy, whether that's Kadarius Toney, probably my favorite. I think that Tennessee gets out to a lead and the Giants have to throw the ball, but who knows if he gets into a fight and gets ejected halfway through the game. So there's always that risk. But Dotson, I agree with. I just can't trust. T. Higgins is a guy that I do like. Shifting gears a little bit, I will probably mention him every single week until he's priced appropriately. But he's not at 6,100. He's a fantastic pivot off of Jamar Chase. He had 100 yards in 6 or 7 games last year. And on FanDuel, they just continue to misprice him. I think he's $7K on FanDuel, which you could easily get to him there.
Yeah. I think there's a world where both Chase and Higgins are like $1,000 more expensive than they are this week, in the future here this year.
You mean like they were last year?
I mean, yeah, like it should be. They should be. Sorry, I don't try. I don't. You said you didn't have a good memory earlier in the show, but I guess you do when it comes to proving me wrong.
T. Higgins is everything to me. So the one name on FanDuel specifically is Robert Woods. At 5,600, he's far too cheap. I don't know why he's 5,600, but he's the number one receiver in Tennessee. I don't trust Treylon Burks just yet. So I think that he's a fantastic cash game option at 5,600. Whenever you see FanDuel price like a player that's priced the same on FanDuel and DraftKings, you tend to have to look at that player on FanDuel, because it often means that FanDuel screwed up again, and they've done it for the last 10 years. And every year I go on a rant as far as them and their pricing. So for those of you that say we don't talk about FanDuel, there you go.
Okay. Anyone else other than FanDuel smashing here on a wide receiver?
I love FanDuel. That's where I play most of my games.
I know. I'm kidding.
Like,
I do
guys.
too. I do too. But yes, they do have some outliers. We'll say more frequently. So, John, did you have anyone else at wide receiver, or should we sum it up here?
I mean, I didn't mention any GPP selections. By the way,
Can I just ask John one question?
Yeah.
Cash game. You're playing a 4,200 guy or less.
I'm going to try to avoid it, but I think if I take CMC, I probably will have to.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not an easy decision. I think I'm going to go pure 3K crapper and go with either Romeo Doubs, depending on the Allen Lazard situation, or Rondale Robinson. He's a guy that got a lot of hype coming out of camp, really fast.
A lot of hype.
Yeah, he's going to
not a lot of height.
Hype.
I was making.
Oh,
not a lot. He's like 5'4",
5'6". Yeah, that's
yeah, we got you.
But he's got that that Rondale Moore kind of role where they're going to line him up a little bit of everywhere, and there's not a whole lot to like in that offense outside of Saquon. So
yeah,
it'll be one of those guys for me, but I'm not going to like it if I have to do it.
Does anyone ever like playing a $3,000 player? So
yeah, it's always tough. I guess the only name that we really haven't discussed at all, at least I don't think I heard it, when Devin was going through earlier trying to figure out who's catching balls in Jacksonville this year. You probably said it and I missed it, but Christian Kirk is a guy that I think is decent for GPPs at 5,100. I do like him. I think he's pretty talented and probably was overshadowed in Arizona with some of the talented wide receivers they've had there over the years. So I like him at 5,100 against the Washington Commanders.
The Commanders. Yeah, I like Christian Kirk as well. So summing up the section here, John likes Marquise Brown, JuJu Smith-Schuster in a game stack with Kyler Murray for GPPs. Also Christian Kirk. Among the low-priced wide receivers, Romeo Doubs, Kadarius Toney, Wandale Robinson, George Pickens, if Deontay Johnson is out, are all sub 4,200. And also John mentioned Adam Thielen. And I think Michael Pittman is, for me, darn near automatic in a cash game this week. So I really like Michael Pittman there this week. And then Devin, of course, weekly requisite mention of T. Higgins. So definitely keep T. Higgins in mind. One guy we didn't mention there that Devin has as his highest percent rostered wide receiver. Granted, it's pretty flat at wide receiver, is Mike Williams from the Chargers there facing off against Vegas in that high potential shootout. I think you got, for me, guys, it's really just the price and the build, wanting to get a little more expensive at running back and just not having the 6,600 for Mike Williams. Is that fair to say quickly?
You're gonna have a lot of people that stack Herbert.
Yeah.
Just because he's like the darling heading into this year, and
yeah,
Williams has big potential, and we've seen what Herbert can do against. I think Williams probably comes down, but those are very early projections. But I think he's a fine play with the upside. For me, I'm not going in we can talk about stacks in a minute, but I'm probably avoiding that stack.
Okay. All right, so let's move to tight ends then. Couple quick injury things. Zach Ertz was limited Wednesday and didn't practice Thursday, so a downgrade midweek. Cliff Kingsbury says he's day-to-day. And then the big news at tight end is George Kittle didn't practice either Wednesday or Thursday and has been reported as unlikely to play. Devin said we were going to mention one name at tight end. Is it Tyler Kroft at 2,700 replacing George Kittle? I'm kidding. Mention your name.
I mean, for me, and I don't know, now that we've talked about this, we're going to mention more than one name, but
yeah, of course.
Travis Kelce, if you can afford him, that's where I would go in order to fit one of those 4,200 guy or less guys.
Yep.
I look at Kelce and 6,600 is too cheap. He should be in the mid sevens realistically, because if I compare him to a tight end in the wide receiver in the 6,600 range, I take Travis Kelce all day, every day, because there's no Tyreek Hill. JuJu might be making TikTok videos on the sidelines instead of catching passes. And who are the rest of the receivers? Sammy Watkins, who's washed, and Mecole Hardman, who people have wanted to become a thing and just hasn't. So Mahomes is going to throw the ball. He's going to target Kelce. If you can afford him, I think he's the guy. The only other name that I really have, I like Cole Kmet at 3,700. I talked about Justin Fields looking better. I think that the Bears don't really have much at wide receiver, and they're not going to have a lot of time to throw the ball. So I think Fields could be peppering Kmet for 4 or 5 catches this week, which at 3,700 may pay off.
Did you just say Sammy Watkins?
I did mention Sammy Watkins.
So here's how washed Sammy Watkins is. He's on Green Bay, and Alan Lazard's about to be out, and we didn't even mention him in that segment.
Oh my God.
So sorry. The YouTube commenters would have said it if I didn't.
They're going to kill me anyway, so it's fine.
Exactly. So I'm just trying to ease the blow.
Scantling is the guy I was thinking about.
Scantling, yeah.
But he sucks too.
Yeah, not washed, just not good in a different way. He only runs one route. I have a name that's very low on the end, John, but maybe you'll get to him before me, and if not, I'll kick it in after. Go ahead with your tight ends, John.
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree with the take on Travis Kelce. He looks to be the class of the position this week. I am very bullish on Kyle Pitts as a player for his career. I don't know about this particular week though. He's a guy that's middle of the realm for me. The other name I would consider for cash is Irv Smith in Minnesota. He's cheap enough. He's basically half the price of Kelce. So if you need to save salary and you don't want to go with one of those guys, wide receiver, to save salary, I typically like to punt this position just because it's the most variable position on a DFS roster. So from a game strategy perspective, I think you could do worse than Irv Smith, who last year, I think it was his sophomore season, he had a handful of touchdowns and was competing against Kyle Rudolph, if I'm not mistaken, and Rudolph is gone now. So I think he has an uptick in terms of output this year. For GPPs, I agree with Devin. I don't think Cole Kmet's a cash game play, but I do think that he's probably the best receiver in Chicago. I do like him for GPPs, as well as Dallas Goedert, Philadelphia up against the Detroit Lions. 4,500, I think he's one of the better plays with multiple touchdown upside.
Very good. So the bottom of the barrel tight end, if you really want to get luxurious everywhere else, $2,500, rookie Isaiah Likely for Baltimore. He is going to be Baltimore's third most targeted player, which not a huge fantasy viable role. I understand that they're a run heavy team.
Like one target.
This week, he's $2,500. He destroyed the preseason. He caught 12 of 12 targets. He led them in everything. I know they didn't play all their guys. They rested him in week 3 of the preseason, treated him like a starter. Beat writers say he's going to be on the field. He's their third target. It's Rashad Bateman and nobody else at wide receiver. We know Mark Andrews will be on the field, but they're going to have 2 and 3 tight end sets out there. They're going to split him out in the slot. They're going to put him out wide. And he's $2,500 this week. So just a total punt that neither of you mentioned. So maybe he will go overlooked. He might catch 3 or 4 passes, but at 2,500,
I sure hope Devin Duvernay does not watch our show, because he's going to be really upset at you for that.
Devin Duvernay and James Prochet. That's who this guy's competing with for targets. He has already shown that he's better than they are. He really has. So I do our Baltimore camp reports for in the offseason for Football Guys. And they were talking about this guy from day one. And I know a lot of teams overhype their players, but he actually went out and showed it. So if you have no more money, 2,500 is bare minimum, Isaiah Likely. So I will look forward to you guys mentioning him and saying you are sorry next week.
Name one rookie tight end that's ever paid off.
He's a wide receiver, and that's a season-long stat. First of all, Pat Freiermuth was not bad last year for the Steelers as a rookie. Kyle Pitts wasn't bad either. Good luck for Atlanta as a rookie, but this is 1 week. We're talking about a 1 week slate here. So for the bare minimum, you could do it. You could do worse. All right, let's move on to defenses, a position for which I have admittedly written nothing down. So John, why don't we start with you on defenses this week?
Yeah, I mean, this is a week where I really don't give a whole lot of credence to defense. I build my lineups and then slot in the defense that makes the most sense to me at the end. I've got four defenses written down. The Washington Commanders against Devin's Jacksonville Jags. He's already talked about it. I mean, he understands that's risky, but they've got a lot of pressure up front going up against Trevor Lawrence, who we'll see what his sophomore season brings, but I wasn't overly impressed in his rookie year. The Miami Dolphins going up against the New England Patriots is another kind of punt play at 2,500. They've got one of the stronger secondaries in the league. So I think that they're a bargain at the price that they're offered up at. And then if you've got a little extra salary, and I do think that in a week like this where there's not a lot of value, paying up for a defense sometimes is the contrarian move. Baltimore going up against their former quarterback, Joe Flacco, 4,000. I think a lot of folks are going to not pay up for defense, possibly a good GPP maneuver. And then the New Orleans Saints, we'll see what kind of defense they have in a few weeks, but early reports are they are expected to have a decent defense, and they're going up against Jacoby Brissett in Atlanta and
Marcus Mariota.
Sorry, I pulled a Devin. I almost made it to the end too. Damn it! But thank you. The sentiment is the same. The name was wrong,
Correct.
but the sentiment is the same.
Devin, how about you?
I have nothing more to add. I mean, the Commanders are my cash game play.
Yeah.
Even though I do like the Jaguars this week. The Browns are interesting just because of their revenge factor, and Carolina has a bottom 5 offensive line. So Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney going up against Baker Mayfield, who is known to turn the ball over. So
he sure is. All right. Well, it's really funny. A little bit of behind the scenes for all our listeners and viewers here is before the show we talked on do we want to hit on player movement and I argued and I argued people that are watching this show know the high profile players that have moved. I mean, if we're going to mention them, people know.
People talking don't.
We don't know. John admittedly said I don't know, so we should. He knows most of them, to be fair. I don't want to throw too much shade at you, John, but that's very funny. So a little bit of behind the scenes for the viewers there. We clearly should have had that as a segment, but anyways, we're moving on. We're almost done. Let's go to parting thoughts and words of wisdom. We talked week 1 strategy, but if you have anything else, Devin, we'll start with you. Week 1 strategy, stack, something we didn't cover.
If you're playing GPPs, pick like 3 games and build rosters around those games. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty this week. I think that there's a number of guys that we didn't even mention. You could look at Justin Herbert. You could look at Patrick Mahomes. You could look at even Derek Carr and fully stack that game. So like there's a number of different ways to go. And because of for the most part, I think that the sites did a really good job in pricing this week. So pick a game or two that you think may not be talked about on a lot of these shows, or pick a couple guys that we've mentioned and sprinkle those in too. But try not to go with like the herd this week, because I think a contrarian lineup is going to win.
Great stuff. John.
Yeah, I mean, I talked earlier about my single game strategy for GPP, so certainly don't forget that. Maybe I'll just give a play that I didn't mention earlier. I think we skipped over GPP plays for running backs, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the guys that stood out to me, the running back situation in Washington, D.C. is strange. Brian Robinson came in, basically took over the starting role, and then was unfortunately carjacked and obviously is out for some time now due to being shot. And Antonio Gibson was the quote beneficiary of that unfortunate circumstance. He had the starting job last year and lost it. And I think that it's a wake-up call for him. He's fairly inexpensive, 5,800 going up against the Jacksonville Jags. I think he's an interesting play this week at home as a short favorite. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out with a pair of touchdowns. So, and nobody's going to have him because he's Antonio Gibson. Everybody recognizes he lost his job to a rookie, yada yada. So, decent GPP play this week.
Okay, very good. And I'll leave everybody with a little bit of advice too that I'm going to steal from prior week 1 shows that we've done. Don't blow it all this week. I know we're really excited that football's back. But stay in your lane, right? We talked a few times during this show how week 1 is kind of the most wonky and hard to predict. So maybe that's not the week to put out, all of your money. So stay between the stay in your lane and don't go too nuts and start hating DFS after just 1 week because you lost too much. So that's my sound and conservative advice. So I guess that brings us to the end, guys. Appreciate it. Great first week. We'll be coming to you every single week. As you all probably have gathered, we record on Thursday nights and we publish shortly thereafter for your enjoyment on Friday. Please ping us in the YouTube comments. We know that we have many regulars there that both love and don't love us so much, but we're happy to have all of you. Please check out footballguys.com and all of our season-long and DFS content. We have a huge band of writers that's doing just great stuff over there. So please check out footballguys.com. And so I guess I'll close with saying, for Devin and for John, I'm Ryan. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being a football guy.